The invitation to Whistler had arrived 3 months ago, and Aria Jensen had said yes without thinking it through, caught up in the excitement of her college friends planning their first big reunion trip since graduation 5 years earlier. Now, standing in the lobby of the mountain resort with rental skis she had no idea how to use propped against her shoulder, watching her 7 friends gear up with the ease of people who had grown up doing this. Aria wondered what temporary insanity had possessed her to agree to a ski trip when she had never been skiing in her entire life. She had grown up in Florida, where the closest thing to winter sports was air conditioning set too high. Her friends, meanwhile, had grown up in Colorado, Vermont, and upstate New York, places where children apparently learn to ski before they learn to read. "You look terrified," a deep voice said beside her. Aria turned to find a man roughly her age, maybe a year or two older, also holding rental equipment with the awkward grip of someone unfamiliar with the gear. He was tall, with dark hair that fell slightly over his forehead, warm brown eyes, and the kind of rugged features that made her think of old movies where men still opened doors and meant it. He wore an expensive-looking black jacket, but the way he held the skis suggested money could not buy muscle memory. "Because I am terrified," Aria admitted. "I have never been skiing, not once. I am from Florida." His expression shifted to relief. "Thank God, I thought I was the only one." "I am from Texas, Houston. We do not exactly have mountains." "What are you doing here then?" College friends planned a reunion trip. "Yours too," Aria laughed, genuinely surprised by the coincidence. "Exactly the same situation. I am Aria. Nathan Gallagher." He shifted his skis to shake her hand, nearly dropping them in the process, which made both of them laugh. "Well, at least we can be terrified together. Where is your group headed?" "The intermediate slopes, apparently." "My friend Claire keeps insisting it will be fine, that I will pick it up quickly. She seems to have forgotten that the last time she saw me attempt anything athletic, I tripped over my own feet during our graduation ceremony." Nathan grimaced. "Mine are going to the advanced trails. My buddy Marcus keeps talking about black diamonds like they are something exciting instead of actively life-threatening." Over Nathan's shoulder, Aria could see her friends gathering near the door, already antsy to get out on the slopes. Claire was waving her over with increasing urgency. "I should go before they leave without me," Aria said reluctantly. Something about Nathan's presence had already made this trip feel less daunting. "Wait." Nathan pulled out his phone. "What if we skip the first run? Let our groups go on ahead, and we meet up for the beginner lesson starting in 45 minutes. I signed up for it this morning. There has to be a reason they offer adult beginner classes." Aria felt her shoulders drop with relief she had not realized she was holding. "That sounds significantly better than pretending I know what I am doing on a mountain." They exchanged numbers, and Aria headed over to her friends with significantly more confidence than she had felt 5 minutes ago. She explained she was going to take a beginner lesson first, and while Claire protested that it was unnecessary, their friend Michelle backed her up. "Let her learn properly," Michelle said. "Remember when you tried to teach me and I ended up in a snow bank?" Claire relented, and the group headed out while Aria stored her gear and grabbed coffee from the resort cafe. She found a seat by the window overlooking the slopes, watching tiny figures carve down the white expanse of mountain. The view was admittedly beautiful. All snow-covered peaks and evergreen trees heavy with powder, the kind of winter wonderland that existed in movies but never in her hometown of Tampa. Nathan appeared 15 minutes later with his own coffee, spotted her immediately, and slid into the seat across from her. "I needed caffeine before facing possible death," he said. "You know people ski for fun, right? Children do this. Children are also terrible judges of risk." They eat dirt and climb furniture. Aria laughed, and it struck her how easy it was to talk to him, how natural it felt to share this moment of shared incompetence. So, what do you actually do in Houston when you are not being peer pressured into mountain sports? I run a company. Manufacturing, mostly industrial parts. It is less boring than it sounds, I promise. What about you? I am a veterinarian. Small animal practice in Tampa. So my days involve a lot of scared cats and dogs who think I am trying to murder them when I am just giving vaccines. That actually sounds significantly more interesting than what I do. You are just saying that because everyone loves animals. No, I mean it. I spend my days in meetings and looking at spreadsheets. You spend yours actually helping creatures. There is no comparison. The genuine warmth in his voice caught Aria off guard. Most people, when they found out she was a vet, either launched into long stories about their pets or asked if she made good money. Nathan seemed actually interested in the work itself. They talked easily until it was time for their lesson, and Aria found herself learning more about him in those 30 minutes than she typically learned about someone after multiple dates. He had taken over his family's struggling manufacturing business right out of college when his father had a heart attack and could not continue running it. He had spent the last 6 years turning it around, which he described with matter-of-fact humility that suggested he was downplaying his own success. He liked old movies, terrible puns, and apparently had a rescue dog named Ranger who he described with the kind of fondness that made Aria's heart soften. The beginner lesson was taught by an instructor named Josh who had the patience of a saint and the enthusiasm of a children's television host. Their group consisted of 8 people, all adults who looked varying degrees of anxious. Josh started them on flat ground, teaching them how to put on the skis, how to move, how to stop. Nathan fell twice in the first 10 minutes, both times on completely flat terrain. I think I am worse at this than I anticipated, he said from the snow the second time. Aria, who had managed to stay upright so far, offered him a hand up. You are trying too hard. Just relax. Relaxing on slippery sticks attached to my feet feels counterintuitive. But he took her advice, and the next attempt went smoother. They spent 2 hours with Josh, progressing to the smallest slope the resort offered, barely more than a gentle incline. By the end, both of them could make it down without falling, though their form was probably atrocious. I am calling that a win, Nathan said as they returned their practice equipment. We did not die and we technically skied. The bar is low, but we cleared it. Want to grab lunch? My group is not meeting up until 3, and I have a feeling if I spend the next 2 hours alone, I will talk myself out of going back out there. They found a small restaurant in the village at the base of the resort, a cozy place with a fireplace and surprisingly good sandwiches. Nathan ordered them both hot chocolate without asking, and when Aria raised an eyebrow, he shrugged. You drink hot chocolate after skiing. It is the law. I do not think that is actually the law. It should be. Lunch stretched into 2 hours without either of them noticing. Aria told him about growing up in Florida with 2 older brothers who had treated her like their personal entertainment, teaching her to surf and fish and hold her own in an argument. Nathan talked about being an only child who had spent most of his youth reading and tinkering with machines, figuring out how things worked by taking them apart. Did you ever manage to put them back together? Aria asked. Eventually. My mom was very patient about finding disassembled toasters in the garage. When they finally checked the time, they were both late to meet their respective groups. They found their friends at the ski lift, both groups preparing for another run. Claire pulled Aria aside immediately. Where have you been? You disappeared for hours. I took that beginner lesson, then grabbed lunch. I am here now. Claire studied her with the expression of someone who had known Aria since freshman year of college and could read her like a book. You look happy. I am on a vacation in the mountains. Why would I not be happy? No, you look specifically happy. What happened? Nothing happened. I learned to ski poorly and ate a sandwich. Can we please just go do this run before it gets dark? But Claire kept watching her with knowing eyes, and Aria did her best to ignore it as the group headed up the lift. The intermediate slope was terrifying. Aria made it down through a combination of nervous pizza formation stops and what could generously be called controlled falling. By the time she reached the bottom, her legs were shaking and she was ready to be done for the day. She spotted Nathan at the base, looking equally exhausted, and felt an inexplicable relief that she was not the only one barely surviving. That evening, both groups ended up at the same restaurant for dinner, a large lodge-style place with long wooden tables and a live band playing country rock in the corner. The tables were crowded, and through the chaos of people shuffling seats and grabbing chairs, Aria and Nathan ended up next to each other. How was the intermediate slope? He asked once they had ordered. Traumatic. You. The advanced slope was essentially a cliff. I do not know what I was thinking. That you did not want to look like the weak link in front of your friends. Exactly that. He took a drink of his beer. I made it down alive, but barely. Pretty sure Marcus was laughing at me the entire time. Claire keeps insisting I am doing great, which I know is a lie because I spent half the run sitting in the snow trying not to cry. We are really terrible at this. The worst. They ate dinner while their friends talked around them, but Aria found herself more engaged in her conversation with Nathan than anything else happening at the table. He told her about the pressure of running a company, how most people assumed he had inherited easy success when the reality was he had spent years pulling the business back from the edge of bankruptcy, working 80-hour weeks and making impossible decisions about layoffs and restructures. Everyone thinks manufacturing is dying, he said quietly. And maybe they are right, but we employ 200 people and those are 200 families depending on us. I cannot just give up because it is hard. That is a lot of pressure, Aria said. It is. But it also feels important, you know, like the work matters. She understood completely. She told him about opening her practice 3 years ago, how terrifying it had been to take out loans and sign a lease and trust that she could make it work. How some days she still worried she had made a massive mistake, that she was not experienced enough or good enough. But then, a dog comes in limping and leaves running, or a cat I have been treating for months finally recovers, and I remember why I did this in the first place. That makes perfect sense. The conversation flowed naturally, easily, punctuated by laughter and comfortable silences. Aria could not remember the last time she had felt this comfortable with someone new, this quickly. Usually first meetings were awkward, full of forced small talk and wondering if the other person was bored. With Nathan, everything felt natural. After dinner, Claire pulled Aria aside again as the group was deciding on evening plans. "Who is that?" Claire asked, nodding toward Nathan. "Just someone I met. We were both the only ones who could not ski, so we took the beginner lesson together." "Aria, he has barely looked away from you all night. That is not true." "It absolutely is true, and you have been doing the same thing. What is going on?" "Nothing is going on. We are just talking." But even as she said it, Aria knew it was not entirely accurate. Something was happening, something that felt significant even if she could not quite name it yet. The group decided to go to one of the resort bars, a lively place with a DJ and a small dance floor. Aria was not much of a dancer, but she went along, and was unsurprised when Nathan appeared at her side within minutes. "Want to grab some air?" he asked, nodding toward the back deck. They stepped outside into the cold night, and Aria wrapped her arms around herself. The temperature had dropped significantly, and her breath came out in white clouds. Nathan immediately shrugged off his jacket and draped it over her shoulders before she could protest. "You do not have to do that," she said. "I know. I wanted to." They stood at the railing, looking out at the dark shapes of mountains against the starlit sky. The sounds of the bar were muffled out here, distant enough to feel separate. "Can I ask you something?" Nathan said after a moment. "Sure." "Do you feel like we have known each other longer than 6 hours? Because that is how long it has actually been, and it feels impossible." Aria's heart did something complicated in her chest. "I was thinking the same thing. I do not usually do this," he continued. "I do not usually meet someone and immediately want to spend all my time with them. I am generally much more reserved and boring. You are not boring. You have known me for 6 hours. Give it time." She laughed, but there was something vulnerable in his expression that made her brave. "For what it is worth, I usually do not do this either. I am usually the person who takes months to warm up to people, but this feels different. Different how? Like something I should not let myself miss." Nathan turned to face her fully, and the intensity in his eyes made her breath catch. "I live in Houston. You live in Tampa. I know. That is a significant problem. I know that too. But I really want to kiss you right now anyway." Aria's pulse was racing. "That seems like a reasonable response to the situation." He smiled, really smiled, and then he was kissing her. It was gentle at first, tentative, a question being asked. Aria answered by leaning in, by letting herself feel the warmth of him against the cold night, the solid presence of his hands on her waist. The kiss deepened, and everything else fell away: the bar, the resort, the complicated logistics of their separate lives. When they finally broke apart, both slightly breathless, Nathan rested his forehead against hers. "That was not a reasonable response to the situation," he said. "That was a completely unreasonable, impulsive, wonderful response to the situation. I am not complaining." They stayed outside for another hour, talking and kissing and ignoring the cold until Michelle came looking for Aria to make sure she had not frozen to death. They reluctantly returned inside, and Nathan was pulled away by his friends for a round of shots that he clearly did not want but participated in anyway. Aria watched him from across the bar, and Claire appeared at her side. "You are falling for him," Claire said. "I just met him today." "That does not answer my statement." Aria did not respond because she could not deny it. Something about Nathan had gotten past all her normal defenses, all her usual caution. She barely knew him, and yet she felt like she knew the important parts, the parts that mattered. They left the bar after midnight, and Nathan walked Aria back to her room despite it being out of his way. They stood in the hallway, neither wanting to say goodnight. "Tomorrow," Nathan asked, "we should probably actually try to ski with our groups." "Probably. But maybe lunch again." "I would like that." He kissed her again, soft and sweet, and then forced himself to step back. "Good night, Aria." "Good night, Nathan." She watched him walk away, then let herself into the room she was sharing with Claire and Michelle. Both of them were already there, and both of them immediately pounced. "Tell us everything," Michelle demanded. "There is nothing to tell. You are glowing. People do not glow for no reason." So Aria told them, leaving out the kissing but including everything else. How easy he was to talk to, how much they had in common, how right it felt despite the obvious complications. "What are you going to do?" Claire asked. "I have no idea. We live in different states. We both have careers we cannot just leave. This trip is only 6 more days. But you like him." "I really like him." Michelle flopped back on her bed. "This is so romantic and so tragic at the same time." Thanks, that is very helpful, but she was not wrong. Aria lay awake that night thinking about Nathan, about how unfair it was to meet someone who felt this right when the circumstances were this wrong. She told herself not to get too invested, to enjoy the vacation for what it was, and then go home and move on. But even as she thought it, she knew it was too late. She was already invested. The next morning, Aria met her group for breakfast and tried to focus on the day ahead. They were planning to spend the morning on the slopes, break for lunch, then do another afternoon run. It sounded exhausting, but Aria was determined to at least try to keep up. She made it through 2 runs, both of which went slightly better than the day before, though she was still easily the worst in the group. By 11, she was sore, cold, and ready for a break. She texted Nathan, who responded immediately that he was also dying and lunch could not come soon enough. They met at a small cafe halfway up the mountain, accessible by gondola. Nathan arrived looking windswept and slightly defeated. "I fell 7 times, he announced, sitting down across from her. 7, I counted. I fell 4 times, but one of them was really spectacular. I took out a ski patrol sign. That is actually impressive." They ordered soup and sandwiches, and Aria felt the tension of the morning melt away. This was becoming her favorite part of the trip, these stolen hours with Nathan where they could just be themselves. "Can I ask you something serious?" Nathan said after they had been talking for a while. "Of course." "What happens after this week?" Aria had been dreading this conversation. "I do not know. I do not want this to just be a vacation thing. I know that is probably stupid given we just met, but I cannot pretend I am going to be fine with just walking away." "I do not want that either," Aria admitted, "but I do not see how it works. Houston and Tampa are not exactly close. 2-hour flight. I looked it up. You looked it up last night. I could not sleep, so I looked up flights. There are direct options, relatively cheap. I travel for work anyway. I could come to Tampa." "And I could come to Houston," Aria said slowly. The fact that he had looked up flights made something warm bloom in her chest. "But Nathan, long distance is hard. Most relationships do not survive it. Most relationships do not start with 2 people who cannot ski being forced to spend time together while everyone else is off enjoying themselves." She laughed despite the seriousness of the conversation. "That is true. I am not saying it would be easy, but I think you might be worth difficult." Aria reached across the table and took his hand. "You might be worth difficult too. So we try, but we have to be realistic. We both have demanding jobs. We cannot see each other every weekend. There will be long stretches apart." "I know, but we have phones, video calls. And when we do see each other, it will matter." They talked through the logistics, making plans that felt both hopeful and terrifying. They would finish out the trip, then return to their normal lives and see how it went. They would talk every day, visit when they could, and be honest about whether it was working. That afternoon, Aria went back out with her group feeling lighter than she had all trip. She actually enjoyed the runs, stopped falling so much, and even managed to laugh at herself when she did fall. Claire noticed immediately, "You talked to him. We are going to try to make it work. Long distance." Claire hugged her right there on the slope. "I am so happy for you, but also terrified because long distance is awful." "I know, but he is worth trying for." The rest of the trip fell into a pattern. Mornings and afternoons with their respective groups, lunches and evenings with each other. Aria and Nathan explored the resort together, went to a fondue restaurant in the village, took a horse-drawn sleigh ride that Nathan admitted he had specifically researched because he wanted to do something romantic with her. "You researched romantic activities?" Aria asked as they cuddled under a blanket in the sleigh, the horse's hooves crunching through snow. "I did. I wanted to impress you." Nathan, you have been impressing me since we met in the lobby. You do not need to try this hard. Maybe I want to try this hard. Maybe I want you to know I am serious about this. By their 5th day on the mountain, both of them had improved significantly at skiing. They would never be experts, but they could make it down intermediate slopes without major incident, which felt like a victory. They decided to do a run together, just the two of them, and it was simultaneously the most fun and most stressful ski run Aria had ever done. Nathan fell twice. She fell once, and they spent half the run laughing so hard they could barely stay upright. At the bottom, they collapsed in the snow together, breathless and exhilarated. "We are terrible at this," Nathan said, "the absolute worst. But I have had more fun being terrible at this with you than being good at anything else." Aria rolled over to face him, snow crunching under her jacket. "That might be the nicest thing anyone has ever said to me." He kissed her there in the snow, with people skiing past them and the sun shining overhead, and Aria felt like she was in a movie. This whole thing felt like a movie, too perfect to be real. That evening was their last night at the resort. Both groups had decided to do a fancy dinner at the resort's upscale restaurant, and by coincidence or fate, they ended up at neighboring tables. Aria wore the only nice dress she had packed, a deep green that Claire insisted brought out her eyes. Nathan wore a suit that reminded her he was not just some guy she had met on vacation, but someone successful and put together. He kept looking over at her during dinner, and she kept looking back, and she could see her friends and his friends starting to figure out what was happening. After dinner, the groups merged for drinks, and Nathan's friend Marcus pulled him aside for what looked like an intense conversation. When Nathan returned, he looked slightly embarrassed. "Marcus just asked me if I was dating you," he said quietly. "What did you say?" "I said I was trying to." He seemed surprised. "Apparently I have not dated anyone seriously in 3 years. "Why not?" Nathan shrugged. "Work, mostly. I have been so focused on the company that I have not made time for much else. But also I have not met anyone who made me want to make time. Until you." They left the bar early, wanting to spend their last night together without the audience of their friends. They walked through the resort village, looking in shop windows and talking about everything and nothing. Eventually, they ended up back at the lodge, sitting in the lobby by the fire because neither of them wanted the night to end. "I leave tomorrow at 2, Aria said. "I leave at 4. "This is going to be harder than I thought." Nathan pulled her closer, and she rested her head on his shoulder. "We are going to make it work. I meant what I said. You are worth the difficulty. What if it is not enough? What if the distance is too much? Then we will deal with it when it happens. But I do not want to give up before we even try." They stayed by the fire until after midnight, until security politely suggested they move along so they could close the lobby. Nathan walked Aria to her room and they stood in the hallway again, reluctant to say goodbye. "This is not goodbye," Nathan said firmly. "This is I will see you soon." "When?" 2 weeks. "I will come to Tampa for a weekend. I will book the flight tomorrow." "Nathan, you do not have to do that so soon. I want to see where you live, meet your practice, take you to dinner somewhere that is not at a ski resort." "Okay, 2 weeks." They kissed, long and slow and full of promise, and then Aria forced herself to go inside before she could change her mind and suggest something impulsive like not going home at all. The next morning was chaos. Both groups were packing, checking out, arranging transportation to the airport. Aria barely had a moment to breathe, let alone find Nathan. She saw him once across the lobby, and he caught her eye and mouthed 2 weeks. She nodded, trying to commit every detail of him to memory. The ride to the airport was bittersweet. Her friends were already planning the next reunion trip, but Aria could barely focus. She kept checking her phone, and finally a text from Nathan came through, made it to the airport. Already missing you. She smiled despite herself and texted back. Same. 2 weeks feels like forever. It will go fast. Talk tonight, absolutely. The flight home felt endless. Aria tried to sleep, tried to read, but mostly she just thought about Nathan and wondered if she was being foolish to believe this could work. Long-distance relationships were notoriously difficult. They both had demanding careers. They had known each other for less than a week. Every logical part of her brain said this was a terrible idea, but her heart disagreed. Her heart said Nathan was different, that this was different, that some things were worth the risk. She landed in Tampa to humid air and her brother Daniel waiting to pick her up. He took one look at her face and grinned. You met someone. How do you possibly know that? You have that look. Mom had the same look when she talks about when she met Dad. What happened? Aria told him the whole story during the drive home, and Daniel listened with the kind of focus he usually reserved for important work calls. Long distance is tough, he said when she finished. But if anyone can make it work, it is you. You are the most stubborn person I know. That is your way of being supportive. That is my way of saying you do not give up on things that matter to you. If this guy matters, you will find a way. That night, Aria unpacked and tried to settle back into normal life. Her apartment felt too quiet after a week of constant company. She fed her cat, Milo, who was furious she had been gone, and expressed it by knocking things off her counter. She did laundry, checked work emails, and tried to prepare for returning to the clinic the next morning. At 9, her phone rang. Nathan's name on the screen made her smile. Hi, she answered. Hi, how was your flight? Long. Yours? The same. I have been home for 2 hours and I already want to leave again. They talked for 3 hours about nothing and everything, and when they finally hung up, Aria felt better than she had all day. This could work. It had to work. The next 2 weeks were a lesson in long-distance communication. They texted throughout the day, called every night, and fell asleep on video chat more than once. Nathan sent her flowers at the clinic with a card that said "Thinking of you" from someone who still cannot ski. Aria sent him a ridiculous photo of Milo looking judgmental with the caption, "Milo does not trust you yet." Work was busy, which helped the time pass. Aria had back-to-back appointments, a few emergency cases, and the constant administrative work of running a practice. But no matter how busy she was, she thought about Nathan constantly. True to his word, Nathan booked a flight to Tampa 2 weeks after they had returned home. Aria was embarrassingly nervous picking him up from the airport, worrying that somehow the chemistry would not translate to real life, that the magic of the trip would not survive outside the bubble they had created. But the moment she saw him walking through the arrivals terminal, all her anxiety evaporated. He spotted her immediately, and his whole face lit up. He dropped his bag and pulled her into his arms, and kissing him felt like coming home. "You are real," he said against her hair. "I was half convinced I imagined this whole thing." "I thought the same thing." They spent the weekend exploring Tampa. Aria showed him her clinic, introduced him to her staff, took him to her favorite restaurants and the beach and all the places that made up her life. Nathan was genuinely interested in everything, asking questions and paying attention in a way that made her feel seen. On his last night, they had dinner at a small Italian restaurant near her apartment, and Nathan reached across the table to take her hand. "I have something to tell you," he said. Aria's stomach dropped. "That sounds ominous." "It is not bad. At least I do not think it is bad, but it is significant." He took a breath. "My company is doing really well, better than I have let on. We just closed a major deal that is going to triple our revenue over the next 2 years. "Nathan, that is amazing." "It is. But the reason I am telling you is because I have been downplaying my success. The truth is, the company is worth a significant amount of money. I am worth a significant amount of money. I am not just comfortable. I am a billionaire. Aria blinked, processing this information. You are a billionaire. Yes, and I did not tell you because I wanted you to get to know me first, not my bank account. But we are getting serious and I do not want there to be secrets between us. I appreciate you telling me. Aria's mind was racing. But Nathan, I do not care about your money, I care about you. I know. That is why I am telling you now, because I trust that you know who I am separate from what I have. He squeezed her hand. But it also means some things might be different than you expect. I have security sometimes, especially when traveling. My house is probably bigger than you are picturing. There are things that come with the money that I cannot always control. Okay, we will figure it out. You are not upset I did not tell you immediately? No, I understand why you waited. And honestly, it does not change anything for me. You are still the guy who fell on flat ground during ski lessons. He laughed, some of the tension leaving his shoulders. I really did fall on flat ground. That was embarrassing. They finished dinner and went back to Aria's apartment, and Nathan met Milo officially. The cat, typically standoffish with strangers, immediately jumped into Nathan's lap and started purring. Traitor, Aria said to Milo. He has excellent taste, Nathan countered, scratching behind Milo's ears. That night, lying in bed together, Nathan wrapped around her like he was afraid to let go. Aria felt a contentment she had not expected to find. The weekend had proven that what they had was real, that it could survive outside the vacation bubble. I do not want to leave tomorrow, Nathan said quietly. I do not want you to leave either. Come to Houston next. 2 weeks, I want to show you my life too. Okay, 2 weeks. They fell into a rhythm over the next few months, 2 weeks apart, a weekend together. Sometimes Nathan came to Tampa. Sometimes Aria went to Houston. They talked every day, sent each other photos of their daily lives, and made it work through sheer determination, and the knowledge that the time apart made the time together more precious. Aria met Nathan's friends on her second trip to Houston, and they were warm and welcoming despite her concerns they would judge her for not being part of Nathan's wealthy social circle. Marcus pulled her aside at one point and said, I have never seen him this happy. Thank you for that. Nathan met Aria's family when they came to Tampa for Thanksgiving. Her brothers interrogated him thoroughly, and her parents watched with amused expressions as Nathan handled it with grace and humor. By the end of the night, her father was showing Nathan his boat and her mother was already asking when they were getting married. Mom, Aria said, mortified. What? I am just asking. You clearly love each other. Later, alone in Aria's childhood bedroom, Nathan brought it up. Your mom asked about marriage. I am so sorry. She has no filter. Do not apologize. It is a valid question. He turned to face her. I know we have only been together 4 months, but Aria, I love you. I have loved you since we sat in that lodge talking instead of skiing. I know it is fast, but I also know it is real. Aria's heart was pounding. I love you too. I have been terrified to say it because it felt too soon, but I love you. They kissed, and the conversation about marriage was tabled for later, but it hung in the air between them, full of promise. The holidays were hard, spent apart because of family obligations and work commitments. But they video chatted on Christmas morning, opening presents they had mailed to each other. Nathan had sent Aria a necklace with a delicate ski pendant, making her laugh and cry at the same time. Aria had sent Nathan a photo album of their time together, carefully curated and annotated. I love it, Nathan said, flipping through the pages on camera. I love you. I love you too. By February, they had been together for 6 months, and the long distance was starting to wear on both of them. They were both exhausted from travel, from trying to maintain their relationship across state lines. Aria could feel the strain, and she knew Nathan felt it too. They had planned a weekend in Houston, and Aria arrived Friday night tired from a long week at the clinic. Nathan picked her up from the airport, and she could see the exhaustion on his face too. "We need to talk," he said as they drove to his house. Aria's stomach clenched. "That does not sound good." "It is not bad, but it is important." They got to Nathan's house, a sprawling modern place that still made Aria slightly uncomfortable with its size, and sat down in his living room. Nathan took both her hands. "I cannot do this anymore," he said. Aria felt her heart crack. "You want to break up?" "What? No. God, no, I cannot do the long distance anymore. I cannot keep saying goodbye to you every 2 weeks. I cannot keep living in a different state than the woman I want to marry." "You want to marry me?" "Yes." "I know we said we would wait, that we would take it slow. But Aria, I have never been more sure of anything in my life. I love you, I want to build a life with you, and I cannot do that if we are living 800 miles apart." "What are you proposing?" "Move in with me. Move to Houston." "I know that is a huge ask. I know you have your practice and your life in Tampa, but I have been thinking about this constantly. I can help you find a position at a clinic here or help you open your own practice. I will support whatever you want to do, but I need you here. I need us to stop living separate lives." Aria's mind was spinning. Leave Tampa, leave her practice, her staff, the life she had built. It was enormous. It was terrifying, but the thought of continuing like this, of endless goodbyes and 2 short weekends, was worse. "What if it does not work?" she asked. "What if I move here and we realize we are terrible at living together? Then we will figure it out. But Aria, I do not think that will happen. I think we are going to be great at living together. I think we are going to build something incredible." She looked at him, at this man who had flown across the country twice a month for 6 months just to spend time with her, who had learned to ski poorly just so they could be terrible at it together, who loved her with the kind of certainty she had always wanted but never believed she would find. "Okay," she said. Okay, I will move to Houston. But Nathan, I need time to do it right. I have to tell my staff, help them find a replacement, make sure my patients are taken care of. I cannot just abandon my practice. Take all the time you need. I will be here waiting." They sealed it with a kiss, and then spent the rest of the night planning. Nathan was serious about supporting her career. He had already researched veterinary clinics in Houston, positions that might be opening up, locations where she could potentially open her own practice. He had thought this through completely, had planned for every possible concern she might have. "You really want this," she said, looking at the spreadsheets he had created. "I really want you. The rest is just logistics." Aria returned to Tampa the following Monday and immediately gave her notice at the clinic. Her staff was devastated but supportive, and she promised to help them find a replacement and stay long enough to ensure a smooth transition. She gave herself 3 months, which felt like forever and not nearly long enough at the same time. Those 3 months were a whirlwind. Aria worked with a realtor to list her apartment, sorted through her belongings, and said goodbye to the life she had built in Tampa. It was harder than she expected, full of tears and second-guessing. But every time she talked to Nathan, every time she imagined their life together, she knew she was making the right choice. Nathan flew to Tampa every weekend to help her pack, to meet with movers, to support her through the transition. He met with her at several veterinary clinics in Houston via video calls, helping her evaluate options. One clinic, a well-established practice with a great reputation, offered her a position with the understanding that she could work toward partnership. It felt right, and Aria accepted. Her last day at her Tampa clinic was emotional. Her staff threw her a party, Her regular clients brought cards and gifts, and Aria cried more than she had in years. But underneath, the sadness was excitement. She was moving towards something, towards someone, toward a future that felt full of possibility. Nathan drove to Tampa to help with the final move, renting a truck to transport the things she wanted to keep. They made the drive to Houston together, Milo yowling in his carrier the entire way, and Aria felt like she was closing one chapter and opening another. Moving into Nathan's house was an adjustment. The space was huge, far bigger than she was used to, and it took her weeks to feel like it was actually her home too. But Nathan was patient, giving her space to arrange things how she wanted, making sure she felt like an equal partner in the house. Starting at the new clinic was nerve-wracking. Aria had to prove herself all over again, build relationships with new clients and colleagues. But the work was good, the staff was welcoming, and within a few months she felt like she had found her footing. Living together was everything Nathan had promised. They fell into routines easily, learned each other's habits and quirks. Nathan cooked breakfast every morning, and Aria made coffee exactly how he liked it. They watched old movies on weekends and argued playfully about which was better. Milo claimed Nathan's side of the bed and refused to be moved. 6 months after Aria moved to Houston, Nathan took her back to Whistler. Same resort, same time of year, but this time it was just the two of them. "I wanted to come back here," Nathan said as they checked in. "This is where we met. Where everything started." They spent the week skiing, and both of them were significantly better than they had been the year before. Not good, but competent. They took runs together, had lunch at the same cafe where they had made plans for long distance, and Aria felt the symmetry of it. On their last night, Nathan suggested they take a walk through the village. They ended up at the spot where they had stood on the deck of the bar, where he had kissed her for the first time. "This is where I knew," Nathan said. "This is where I knew you were going to change my life." "I felt it too," Aria said. Nathan reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small box. Aria's breath caught. "I have been carrying this around all week, waiting for the right moment. But I think this is it. This is where we started, and I want this to be where we promise forever." He opened the box to reveal a stunning ring. "Aria Jensen, will you marry me?" Aria was crying, nodding before she could even speak. "Yes, yes, of course yes." He slipped the ring on her finger and kissed her, and Aria felt like her life had come full circle. A year ago, she had been standing in a resort lobby, terrified and holding skis she did not know how to use. Now she was here, engaged to a man she loved more than she had known was possible, building a life that felt right in every way. They got married 6 months later in a small ceremony in Houston with their families and closest friends. Claire was Aria's maid of honor and cried through the entire ceremony. Marcus was Nathan's best man and gave a speech about how he had never seen Nathan fall so hard, both literally and figuratively. Aria wore a simple white dress, and Nathan wore a suit. And when they said their vows, Aria felt like she was promising not just her future but her whole heart. Their honeymoon was back at Whistler, because of course it was. They spent 2 weeks skiing and talking and being together without the pressure of work or obligations. They were still not great at skiing, but they were better, and it did not matter because they were doing it together. 2 years after the wedding, Aria opened her own veterinary practice in Houston. Nathan had helped with the business plan and financing, but the vision was all hers. It was smaller than her Tampa practice had been, more specialized, focused on the kind of work she loved most. She hired a small staff, built relationships with local animal shelters, and within a year the practice was thriving. Nathan's company continued to grow, expanding into new markets and technologies. He traveled more for work, but never so much that it felt like they were apart. They had learned how to be together, even when circumstances tried to pull them apart. 3 years after they married, Aria got pregnant. It was planned and hoped for, but still felt like a miracle when the test came back positive. Nathan cried when she told him, actual tears streaming down his face as he held her. Their daughter, Emma, was born on a warm spring day, and from the moment Aria held her, she knew this was what everything had been leading to. This family, this life, this love. When Emma was 6 months old, they took her to Whistler. It was winter again, snow covering everything, and Aria bundled Emma in so many layers she looked like a tiny marshmallow. They did not ski. Caring for a baby in a mountain resort was adventure enough, but they walked through the village and showed Emma where everything had started. "One day we will tell her this story," Nathan said, holding Emma while Aria took photos. "We will tell her about how we were the only two people who could not ski, and how that ended up being the best thing that ever happened to us. She is going to think we are ridiculous, probably. But she will also know that sometimes the best things in life come from being bad at things together." Aria laughed and wrapped her arms around both of them, her family, her whole heart. 5 years after their wedding, they went back to Whistler for the resort's anniversary celebration. Their old college friend groups were there too, planning another reunion trip. Claire brought her husband, Michelle brought her girlfriend, and everyone marveled at how much had changed since that first trip. Emma was 3 now, old enough to try skiing for the first time. Nathan and Aria took her to the same beginner slope where they had learned, where Josh was somehow still teaching with the same endless patience. Emma fell constantly, but laughed every time, completely fearless in the way only children could be. Watching Nathan ski slowly beside their daughter, ready to catch her if she needed help, Aria felt overwhelmed with gratitude for this life they had built. That evening, the whole group gathered for dinner at the same restaurant where they had eaten that first night. Aria and Nathan sat together with Emma between them, and Aria caught Nathan's eye across the table. "What are you thinking?" she asked quietly. "I am thinking about how 6 years ago I came here expecting a terrible week of pretending to enjoy a sport I was bad at, and instead, I met you. I found everything. I was thinking the same thing. Well, not exactly the same thing, but close." Emma reached for Nathan's hand, and he took it automatically, his other hand finding Aria's under the table. The restaurant was loud with conversation and laughter, their friends telling stories and making new memories. Outside, snow was falling gently, covering the mountain in fresh powder. Everything had started here, with two people who could not ski, who spent more time talking than trying. And now, years later, with a family and a life and a love that had survived distance and doubt and every obstacle that had tried to stand in their way, they were back where it all began. But this time, they were not two strangers figuring each other out. They were partners, parents, a team that had learned how to fall together and get back up stronger every time. Aria looked at Nathan, at Emma, at the life they had created from a chance meeting in a ski resort lobby, and knew without question that sometimes the best journeys started with not knowing what you were doing, with being brave enough to admit you needed help, with finding someone who was just as lost as you were, and deciding to figure it out together. They would come back to Whistler every year after that, a family tradition rooted in the place where everything changed. Emma would grow up hearing the story of how her parents met, how they were terrible at skiing but fell in love anyway, how sometimes the best things in life happened when you least expected them. And years later, when Emma brought her own partner home for the first time and told the story of how they had met, Aria and Nathan would listen and smile, recognizing the familiar pattern of unexpected love, of taking chances, of building something beautiful from imperfect beginnings. because that was the real lesson they had learned on that mountain 6 years ago. Love was not about being perfect or having everything figured out. It was about finding someone who made you want to try, even when you were scared. It was about falling down together and laughing about it. It was about choosing each other, every day, in all the small moments that added up to a lifetime. Nathan squeezed Aria's hand under the table, and she squeezed back, a silent conversation they had perfected over years of practice. Emma was telling a very animated story about her skiing lesson, using wild hand gestures that nearly knocked over a water glass. Their friends were laughing, the fire was warm, and outside the snow continued to fall on the mountain where two people who could not ski had once decided to spend more time talking than trying. And in doing so, they had found forever.